All right, we're actually going to do something here that we can. I guess we've somewhat done it in some videos. We've looked back on different projects, different franchises, movies, shows, whatever. But we're going to do something a little bit new this time, and we're going to do a retrospective look on a film franchise that we both grew up watching, and that's Transformers. I know it's not the most critically well regarded, maybe, and that's kind of what we want to discuss today. Is the arguments for and against it, and also kind of our general thoughts. However many years later since we first watched them, I've recently just gone through and rewatched all of them for whatever reason. I decided to do that. I don't know, but I just thought it'd be fun to kind of look back and talk about the movies. So for that, and then at the end of this, we're going to actually give our rankings of all the movies as they stand so far. But this will include the original three with Shia LaBeouf, and then the two with Mark Wahlberg, and then the two basically reboots with Bumblebee and Rise of the Beasts, which was until Transformers 1 came out a week or two ago, the animated movie. That was the most recent one. So we have not seen Transformers 1, so we're not including it in this discussion. But for the sake of this one, those other seven that I mentioned will be the ones we're kind of talking through. But yeah, Michael Bay, he's a bit of a divisive director, to say the least. He's done some good stuff. He's done some questionable stuff. But I think he's inherently linked to our childhood for two or three different reasons. I think one being, obviously, neither of us grew up when the original Transformers show, the animated show, was out. So really our introduction into the world of the Transformers was the Michael Bay movies. So for better or for worse. And so then also he came back. I don't know. I can't remember the exact years. I want to say it might have been in between when he did the Dark of the Moon, and then when he did Age of Extinction. But he came back and he did two Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies, which is very relatable to my childhood because I grew up watching the 2003 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series that was really good. So yeah, he's kind of inextricably linked to our childhoods, and so we're going to kind of talk about
it is what it is.
Yeah, talk about it and just kind of kind of dissect it a little bit because it's one of those that's a very imperfect franchise, and I think it'll be fun to kind of dive in. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. And I guess we'll start with the ones that started it all, and that's the original Transformers, and then Revenge of the Fallen and Dark of the Moon. I guess let's talk about maybe some of the areas we feel like the movies do a good job, and then we'll talk a little bit more on some of the negatives too. But I'll let you kick it off.
I mean, it's Michael Bay, so you get what I want to say you get what you pay for, but you get what you expect. I mean, it's a movie full of explosions and fighting robots. I mean, this is it.
I mean, I will say after watching all of these back again, one thing that Michael Bay can absolutely do is film an action scene, and his cinematography, like the CGI, the special effects, the pyrotechnics of his although he has to use a lot of CGI for the actual Transformers, most of his filming, I think, is practical effects. Like you'll see actual cars flying all over the place. Like you can tell watching the movie that they're really doing that. And like he's obviously got great connections with the military because all the military scenes feel realistic. So like I will hand it to him that he can do action sequences. He can do he's pretty good at the scale, making it feel like an epic world ending sort of feel. And I think that those are the best things maybe about it for me is just um, maybe that aspect of it that I appreciate because like you can always even though you don't necessarily like love a filmmaker you can appreciate things about his style and I think like that's how I am with James Cameron. There's a lot of James Cameron movies I'm not crazy about or I think he's just maybe an average director but there's a lot of things that he does really well and so I think you know you can find the good and the bad in things.
And I mean, I like you said, the action scenes. I like those a lot. Um, the way the Transformers look like, and I know you can call me biased, I guess, because we grew up with these movies. But to me, like that's how the Transformers are supposed to look. Um, you know, I know a lot of the live action movies, or all these are all live action. I know Transformers One is kind of your only animated one, but we're not going to include it. But I think you know they did a really good job. I think it's what 2007 the first one came
I
out.
think the first one was
So
2007. Yeah.
um, I really like the CGI. It's not overdone. I know we talk about it being done overdone sometimes. Um, it's the first one I enjoy. We'll go over our rankings. I enjoy the first one and the third one. The second one's kind of long, gets a little hard to
Yeah,
sit through at
it's
times.
it's a little weird.
Um,
Um,
but
I
I
yeah, I
think
think it's definitely like it's one of those things that I think the special effects like the CGI and stuff holds up really well now. And you know, after just watching the Rise of the Beasts recently and comparing it to like the original Transformers, the CGI in the original Transformers is way better. Um,
I think
and and I actually read an interesting article about that that I'll discuss when we get to that movie. Um, but yeah, so it's the fact that like the movie looks good. I mean, Michael Bay kind of has that reputation of making movies with explosions,
so.
uh, you know, attractive women and you know, pretty ridiculously stupid dialogue, which is kind of what you get
I mean,
with some of his.
the plot's a mess. Let's be real
And
on just about all of
he's
them.
like the king of MacGuffins, man. It's like every movie, it's like we got to get the cube, we got to get the seed, we got to get the staff, we got to get the. It's like there's no story. It's just there's a thing they have to get, and so therefore they go places, and like that is the story of every single Transformers movie,
And they got to fight the
literally.
whole way.
Yeah, and so don't come in expecting a deep, complex story. The only movie that comes close to having a legitimately well written story is Bumblebee and
Yeah.
and ironically enough, it's probably the least Transformers movie of all the Transformers movies.
Yeah, there's
And
only what a total of like 3 or 4 Transformers in it the whole time.
yeah, it's mostly like a story of loss and you
Yeah,
know
I mean,
recovering from. I mean, it's weird because it's like the only one of all of them that's like that, and so but it's it that's kind of his mo, and I think what I noticed after watching the first one and then immediately turning around and watching the second one like the next day, where Michael Bay gets into trouble as a director is like he directed the first five Transformers movies. Funny enough, Steven Spielberg actually helped produce, like he was heavily involved in the very first Transformers movie. Um, but something with Michael Bay that I noticed is like I've seen him say things like he wants to make movies that him and a bunch of friends can sit around and watch and not have to think too much about and just enjoy it. And it's like, yeah, that's basically what all of his movies
well, that's
are.
what he did.
But when you go from Transformers to Revenge of the Fallen, you can almost tell that Steven Spielberg is absent because the dialogue and some of the like innuendos and like sexual jokes and stuff in it are just like over the top to the
And
point
it's
where
that way in Dark of the Moon too.
Dark of the Moon is not as bad, but it is still like he's just got some really like goofy kind of perverted humor, and it shines a lot more in the, or I shouldn't say shines, it shows up a lot more in the second and
Yeah.
third one, and especially in the two Mark Wahlberg ones, I think too, than it does in the first one. And so I think maybe that Steven Spielberg kept him
Grounded a little bit.
grounded. But I've
Uh,
also heard that Steven Spielberg told him he needed to quit making Transformers movies, and he just like kept making them. So
well, I like Dark of the Moon. I don't know. Most people may not, but Dark of the Moon. I think it had the. I don't want to say. I don't know about the best story. It had one of the better stories. Definitely better of the five. Um, uh, and I like, you know, it's just it's not so like the first one and second one feel really similar in a lot of ways. It's kind of like there's not a lot of change between the first and second one, but then the second and third one, I think, is where you know you start off pretty good, and then you go pretty far down to get to Revenge of the Fallen, and you come back up with Dark of the Moon. So um,
well,
there's some parts of Dark of the Moon that I thought, wow, I knew that was going to happen, but I enjoyed how they did it. Like
well,
you know, the Autobots were coming back after they blow up the spaceship or whatever. But like it was just a matter of how, and I enjoyed how and when they did it, and when I guess you can say Michael Bay, how and when he did it. So
well, I think Dark of the Moon has probably which what I like about the first one is that you're sort of introduced to the Autobots, and it's also you're introduced to Sam's character, and you sort of have this decently constructed story of like they're looking for this Allspark, and they're trying to, and also the Decepticons. Like it's a simple story that helps to introduce all the players
yeah,
in the game,
yeah,
and it's pretty fast paced and interesting, and like really good action sequences, and then you get into Revenge of the Fallen, and it just kind of devolves into a hunt for such and such thing, and it's which like I said, the first one's like that, but then you get to Dark of the Moon, and it's like they take the concept of the first moon landing, and they somehow, obviously it's false, but it's like they take it and they make it about
right.
them
Make it
being
about
able
this.
to, yeah, go and check out this alien spaceship. And
Yeah,
then I think it's probably the more well constructed in a story concept of the ones. I
I
would
mean,
agree with your assessment, I think, on
as
that.
far as practicality, does it make a lot of sense? No, probably not. But they tell it in such a way that you can kind of easily overlook that if that makes sense. Um,
Well, I think the another issue too is like Michael Bay doesn't do characters very well, and so like there's almost all the characters are surface level. Like the only character you really learn it about in any depth is Sam's character, and that's really like he's kind of an oddball and outcast in the first one, and so it's kind of about him.
yeah,
It's not like the hero's journey, but it's like he's trying to sort of prove that he's not just this goofy outcast kind of high school can actually do
wannabe.
something. Yeah, and so the second one's kind of like how it is with like, for example, like I think a comparable storyline. Even though like this movie that I'm about to say, I'm not putting them on the same level. It's a better movie, but a similar story arc is Spider-Man 2, where like now he just wants to be a normal guy. He doesn't want to be a hero. He doesn't want to be involved with everything. He just wants to go to college, and he wants to,
Right.
you know. And then obviously with 3, you get this whole thing of,
He's
with,
trying to be a grown up and
well, but he's
can't.
also he's been basically blackballed from anything to do with the Autobots, and so
Yeah.
he wants to be
He
like,
wants to be important
yeah,
like he
and so
was.
there's a good story arc in there, and I think even though the rest of the characters you basically know little to nothing about, is
And
you just,
most of your likable characters are robots, so it's kind of hard to.
yeah, Yeah, but it's like your
That's
side
cool,
characters,
man.
like Michaela's character, played by Megan Fox. Like she used to have a juvenile record. Her dad was in prison, but it's like, and she can fix cars, but like that's about it. Like you
Well,
don't really.
and there could have been an end to her arc in the Dark of the Moon, but I think I can't remember if she just flat out refused to do that movie or if
I
she was
don't think
already
she
doing something
wanted.
else. I think.
If I remember correctly, I thought she didn't want to work with Michael Bay, but like that wouldn't make sense because she worked with him on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So
Right. I
I don't
think she
know.
was doing something else at that time. Like I think she was already working anyway. But then I know we spent a lot of time talking about the first three, but the next two is where
I think it goes off the rails to say the least.
you fall off a cliff. I mean
And
the the
I will
next two is
say,
the reason you have Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast.
yeah, I mean, it's it's kind of it's a little unfortunate because Age of Extinction kind of coincided with Shia LaBeouf's fall from grace, I guess you could say, because
Yeah.
I don't know if he was into drugs or like he basically got to where he was pretty nutso there for a time, and essentially they kind of had to they kind of had to move on from him, and
Yeah.
um, and they went with a guy that I think obviously was a sure thing in terms of Hollywood talent. Like Mark Wahlberg is pretty well known, but and I don't by any means think that Mark Wahlberg is the issue with
No, he's not the issue with this
those
movie at
movies.
all.
But the problem is, I think that Michael Bay should have stopped after Dark of the Moon,
I think
and
so.
it would have been a fitting conclusion to the series. But then he's like, "Oh, but I'm making all this money. I'm
Yeah.
just going to make more." And I was actually going to pull
I
this
mean
up because
yeah, the box office for all the Transformer movies, not this is all seven, so don't misunderstand me on the five, but for all seven, the box office is like $5.288 billion.
yeah. So can you see that? Okay, right there.
I can't. You're not sharing your screen.
Okay, you see that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the original one made almost 320 million. Um, the second one's actually the most with 402 million. Um, and then Dark of the Moon at 352 million. Age of Extinction, I mean, not far behind the the original 245. And then obviously you see a huge drop off with the last night to 130.
Yeah,
And funny
and
enough,
that's the only
Bumblebee,
reason Bumblebee is that low is because of
well, I
the
think people were
performance
kind
of
of
Age of Extinction and
disenfranchised
Last
at
Night.
that point. Yeah.
Right, and I mean, then you look at number seven, like so of the top five Transformers movies, the seventh one is, the seventh one is the movie from the '80s.
Yeah. And I'm going to look it up too because I want to see if there's a list of um, how much it cost. Yeah, production budget. So it cost him 151 million to make the first uh, Transformers,
Yeah,
and he actually so worldwide. The other one wasn't including worldwide box office. This one worldwide box office, he made $708 million, and
pretty
then
good.
Revenge of the Fallen was the 836. I mean, like he's making. I mean, look at these two: Dark of the Moon over a billion,
Yeah. So
Age of
did Age of
Extinction
Extinction.
over a billion. I mean, no wonder the dude kept making movies. I mean, his profits just kept going up. But then you see that big drop off with the
And
last night
it
and
just goes
rightfully
further
so.
down with Bumblebee. Which I did so, and correct me if I'm wrong, did Rise of the Beast come out in theaters or did it go straight to streaming?
It was in theaters, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And and I think that's interesting. And I mean that's a proof as to why he kept doing them. I think
Oh yeah.
that's kind of I mean,
And
when you see the 1 billion over there
and
next to the
I think Age of Extinction, and I'll say this about the last night too. Age of Extinction missed some really good opportunities in its story. The story itself, again, it's just a mess. It's pretty awful. Like Lockdown, that's a good villain, and he was done. I thought he was done well, but I just didn't like, a lot of parts of that story. Like we're trying to rebuild a we're trying to build our own Transformers. Like I don't
Some of that does not make like I after watching it the other day, some of that does not make sense. It's like
know.
the motivation of the villain was to get this seed that was going to produce this transformium metal that was going to help them to build more robots in order to keep the world safe from other robots. And so I'm like, they're wanting to get rid of the robots by creating their own robots. And I'm
Right.
like,
And
that
you mean to
doesn't,
tell me there's 3 Dinobots hanging out somewhere?
yeah, yeah. Just
I don't know. It's
conveniently
just
right
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yep. And I mean Lockdown though, love the character.
He, so I wish they would have, because I think where the movie is actually really interesting is at the beginning, where there's this theme of like, okay, they're not just hunting Decepticons, they're hunting every Transformer
Right.
regardless. And so Optimus is like in hiding. And I think they could have done something really cool with that to where you could have come from different perspectives of the different Autobots in hiding and how they're kind of having to get back together. And they also just
And
introduced new Autobots without any explanation as to
without
where they came from. And
I love the ones they introduced. Got great picks, but where'd they come from?
yeah, which I don't think Michael Bay cares too deeply about stuff like that.
He
And I
doesn't.
think it's
And
also like there's really no like Cade Yeager's character, played by Mark Wahlberg, really doesn't have much of a story arc. It's just like they try to play him off as sort of this failed father, failed inventor, but it's like there's really no payoff for that. There's not really a whole lot of that you care about because they don't
yeah.
really go into it. So
And I mean, I think The Last Night suffers exactly the same way. Like at the end of the Age of Extinction, he flies off into space and goes and tries and find, whoever sent Lockdown, and she ends up coming to Earth anyway. So like,
well, that and like Optimus is in that movie for like a third of the movie. Like
yeah,
he's in very little, and they spend a ridiculous amount of time in that movie just following Mark Wahlberg's character and the chick. I can't remember the actress's name who plays the British chick, and like following around in this weird sort of King Arthur weird knight storyline that I like the King Arthur stuff, but it's just like it feels so odd and out of place compared to the other movies.
yeah, Vivian Wembley. Um, I I just I like the King Arthur stuff. Like that's where I think this movie could have capitalized um, on something like that. But it almost feels like there's 2 stories being told throughout the whole movie. Like there's one thing happening over here, and then there's another thing happening, and it's just a mess. I mean, it's
That
all
and the dialogue in five, like the script for the character dialogue is atrocious. Like
yeah.
it is cringeworthy and like really hard to like it is a slog to get through that movie.
And so, like Anthony Hopkins, like you just wasted him because
Yeah,
all of his dialogue, like.
stupid. It's like
But the
goofy.
premise of that is very interesting, but the execution was awful.
But I
So
think that's just how he is. I mean, Age of Extinction suffers from a lot of the bad dialogue and just basically
they're basically the same again. So I kind of separated those a little bit. You kind of got 1 through 3, and then 4 and 5. I know that's
you have to
I
say, even
know
though it's a continued storyline, technically they don't feel connected.
no, they don't at
Yeah.
all. So and
And
I
then we
think
kind of get into a yeah,
that's why you get Bumblebee the way that it is.
yeah.
It's basically I don't want to call it a reset, but it's like hey,
But it is. I
here's a
mean, it's a reboot.
Transformers movie that's not what these last 4 were.
But it's also a reset of the storyline where they make the Transformers look more like they do in the cartoon, which at first I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. But then the thing I appreciated about Michael Bay is that he made the Transformers realistic to like present day.
Yeah.
Like the vehicles were vehicles that are actually driven today, and like
Right.
they looked like, because I
Which
especially saw this in Rise of the Beast. But like the Transformers just look really CGI'd in Bumblebee and Rise of the Beasts. So like they don't even
which I,
look realistic.
Bumblebee was set in what the 90s,
70s, I think, or
70s.
80s.
I can't remember. But so those cars they fit, but again, they just look kind of CGI'd. I'm with
They
you.
look like they pulled them out of a cartoon. Like
Yeah.
they don't look like cars that would
Right.
exist today.
So
But what's great about Bumblebee is it's the most well written story, and like we said before, ironically, the least Transformers movie, because it's honestly more about um, Haley Steinfeld's character than it is about Bumblebee. And even obviously there's Bumblebee. He's sent to Earth as kind of like a scout or a, to kind of search out whether that's going to be a viable place for the other Autobots to come to, and it turns into him sort of being this friend that, um, I guess Carly is the character's name in the movie, but it's kind of the friend she needed in a moment where she's lost her.
yeah.
Was it her dad? I think it was in the movie,
Yeah.
and she's sort of shut herself off from everybody. And she's also in that awkward high school stage where she's sort of an outcast. And so the best things about the movie are actually the more human moments of it. And
Yeah.
I think that's
And
you know
eh, you know, I like this is where, the story is good again. I say again. The story is better. The action scenes are
they're
lackluster.
few, but they're good.
Yeah, they're just not as I just, you get used to the ones that Michael Bay did. And they're just not they don't live up to that, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
but the plot is a lot good also. Is a lot
yeah,
better, I mean.
a
So
lot gooder. Yeah.
a lot gooder. More good. Whatever.
Yeah,
But
and
then
it's
Rise of the but then I was gonna say Rise of the Beast you kind of fall back. I say you kind of fall back a little bit.
well, I think Rise of the Beast feels a lot more like a Michael Bay movie than it does, because like Travis Knight was the director of Bumblebee, totally different director. Now Michael Bay was an executive producer, but um, clearly that was a Travis Knight movie because it doesn't feel like a Michael Bay movie. The
Right.
dialogue is a lot better. It's a lot more like character driven, which is not like a Michael Bay movie. Um, and yeah, it's so it's clear that with Rise of the Beast, I'm afraid they might have been like, oh, we didn't make as much with Bumblebee. Maybe we need to be more Michael Bayish for this next one. And it basically devolves into the same.
Falls
Here's
right
this
back into
thing.
the same old
Here's
thing.
this thing you need to go get. The bad guys are trying to get it too, and you have to get it first. And like that's how the first five movies are.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
um,
and I'll say it now. That end credit scene, if they continue with that, ruins Transformers for me.
that threw me off so hardcore when I saw it. I was like,
I'm
"What?"
talking ruins. I know they're the same, they're owned by Hasbro. That's cool, but that's not even they're not even the same thing at all.
Yeah, we're gonna spoil it here because like if you, I mean, this movie's been out for a while, but
It's been
yeah,
out for a year.
the end credit scene, the guy hands the main character of the movie a business card, and on the card it says GI Joe, and so it's like
Uh,
he's joining a. But it's like here's my thing about that. Like the GI Joe movie franchise has been dead for like a decade,
yes.
and so
Well, and
what?
I'm fine with them bringing back GI Joe. Don't get me wrong. I
No, but
think
I'm
they
saying
could
like,
redo GI Joe,
you'd have to
but it's got
reboot it.
nothing to do with Transformers.
Yeah,
Absolutely nothing.
yeah. Now, granted, I could see a world where it could work because if you think of, and this is just theorizing here, but if you think of where you have the humans fighting with the Autobots to kill the Decepticons and all that, and all the sequences, especially in like Revenge of the Fallen, Dark of the Moon, where you can see they're working in tandem with each other to take out the Decepticons in like a combat zone. It's like I could see we're like having human allies that are like, you know, uh, specially trained, like GI Joe is to fight, where you could make a tangible storyline of like the GI Joes teaming up with the Autobots and the Cobra or the Cobra guy, Cobra. I can't remember the character. That's the
Snake Eye?
villain in
Oh,
no, the villain in GI Joe. You could have him like teaming up with the Decepticons, and like I think it would be really like cartoony and like over the top, but it would be something that like could feasibly work. I just don't think it would particularly make that
ah,
much money because I don't think
no.
many people that aren't born in like the '80s really care much about GI Joe and Transformers at this point.
And
So,
you know, I think for me the what you could say about this Rise of the Beast is, again, cool robots, annoying characters.
yeah, Pete Davidson as Mirage is like kill me now. When he showed up on the screen, I was like, I don't know who this guy's voice is, but I recognize him, and he's ticking me off. And then I saw it was Pete Davidson. I was like, crap, I gotta listen to this guy for 2.5 hours.
I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it's also not very memorable.
It's
It was pretty
just
disappointing.
it's just very unoriginal to me. Like it doesn't do anything new. I mean, other than like giving the main character like a suit of armor at the end, which is kind of cool. I like that aspect of it.
I mean, is it bad? Is it as bad as the last night? No.
No,
Is it?
barely.
But barely. Yeah.
Like I debated whether I liked this one better
Oh
than
no.
Age of Extinction, and it was very close. They're
No.
kind of on the same
Well,
footing with me.
we can go over. I mean, we can go over in our rankings, but to me, Age of Extinction was the worst.
See, to me, the last night was way harder to
I mean,
get
they're
through than Age
both
of
bad. They're
Extinction.
both
But
bad, but
yeah,
I don't
well,
know.
let's do that. Let's jump right into our rankings then, because we've actually I got a little graphic for us here, and we'll we'll present. Let me see. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me present it here.
That one's Ethan's. So we can
Yeah,
roast since he can't defend himself.
yeah. Oh yeah, we're gonna roast him. All right. If I can remember how to present
Uh,
this.
bottom right. Not the help button, that one. Yeah.
Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I think me and him are like,
So yeah. So for reference, this is Schultz, as he was not able to be with us tonight, but this is where he had them ranked. He obviously had the
he
first.
hadn't seen the Rise of the Beast either, so
No,
he only did 6. I mean, I think this is right where mine are. I mean,
he just had the last night swapped with yours, I think.
yeah, well, yeah, I had darker, and we'll go over mine, but just the top 3 are the same, the bottom 3 are the same. I think the order changes a little bit, but
Well, and he's more on the like I tend to think that the first Transformers movie is the least the best of the original three. Um, but what I mentioned in our group text the other day is like the first three are the most watchable outside of Bumblebee of the seven movies. Like they whether the story's great all the time or not, they're entertaining and they look
yeah,
good visually to the point where they keep you engaged.
yeah.
When you get to Age of Extinction the last night, it's just like
Ooh, can't even watch it.
do, it question it's like you question your reasoning for existing for
Like you
watching.
can
It's
watch,
just
you turn it on and you watch specific scenes of that, of the fighting basically, and then you watch the end and that's it.
it's like yeah, you're like, why am I watching this again? What's happening? Why should I care about what's going on? I don't know. But but yeah, this is where he's got him. So he's got the original one, the original Transformers at 1, Dark of the Moon at 2, Bumblebee at 3, and then Revenge of the Fallen at 4, and then he ends it with Age of Extinction and The Last Night. And then you've got slightly different here.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, top three are the same. I've got Rise of the Beast at 5. It's just it's better than The Last Night or Age of Extinction to me. Age of Extinction, and I know we've had people on here that we've done our consensus ranking before. We rank it on watchability. Like,
yeah,
if I'm going to sit down and turn on a Transformers movie, this is the order that I would watch them in.
yeah.
Not barring anything else. Age of Extinction to me is just, I'm sorry, it's god awful.
Well, neither of those two are are much worth watching,
but I like Dark of the Moon. I always have. To me, that was kind of like the last of the good
the
Transformers.
good one.
It's kind of where he should have stopped.
Yep.
But
well, and the money would agree. The money would agree with you too because it's the highest grossing of all of them.
yeah, I think and Bumblebee, like we talked about, Bumblebee's good for different reasons. But
Well, and we'll jump over to mine here, but mine's slightly different. We all had Revenge of the Fallen at 4. Mine and your last 3 are the same, except I have Age of Extinction and The Last Night flipped.
I mean, they're both pretty bad.
And that's the reasoning for me that why I can tolerate Age of Extinction more than The Last Night is because there's at least some interesting story elements in Age of Extinction with like the Deceptic or the government's hunting down Autobots and Decepticons. Well, anything really. That sort of dynamic is interesting. I wish they would have played into it more. Um, the dialogue to me is less bad in Age of Extinction than it is in The Last Night. And I think the side characters of his daughter and the boyfriend are slightly more interesting than the side characters uh, in The Last Night. And um, I think in The Last Night, it's just like we're gonna make another one, but we don't really know what we're gonna do. Let's just do King Arthur, and it's like, and to me, it just doesn't really work, and it just feels like in left field for me. But you know, and with Rise of the Beast, the interesting story I was going to bring up is that so ILM, we know they originally were created for the um, and the name escapes me. I know Lighting and Magic or something is the last 2 letters, but it's the company that originally did the Star Wars movies in the 70s and 80s, and then it was George Lucas's sort of brainchild of making a company that could do special effects and CGI and all that. And so, but they actually did the special effects of CGI for all of the other Transformers movies except Rise of the Beasts. And essentially, there was this other company that came in and did it, and they weren't able to get it done on time, so they had to bring another company in to do it. And so they actually came out after the movie Rise of the Beast came out and apologized for how poorly the CGI looks in the movie. Like when you watch it, it's like this looks like a bunch of cartoon characters thrown in a real life like environment,
yeah.
and it's pretty bad. Like when I watched it, it's like, did this just get exponentially worse in CGI? Because like I was like, I don't remember Bumblebee being this bad, and so yeah, that was kind of the interesting thing is that they had a different company do their special effects and everything. So, but that's with me like the first Transformers. It's the first one, and it's like I said, Spielberg's involved, and so I feel like it's the least bad of all the um, original ones. And then Bumblebee, the only reason I probably don't have it ranked at 1 because it is the best written of all of them in terms of a story. But to me, it's the least Transformers movie because there's just not a lot of actual Transformers in it.
Yeah.
And that's why I have it where it is. And then obviously Dark of the Moon at 3. Um, I don't know. This one, it's entertaining, and it's one like you said, you can pop it in and you can watch it
Yeah.
and not really get bored with it. So um,
At
I
least
like.
some of the Shia LaBeouf humor is good. I know some of it gets old, but
Yeah, he's definitely a little over the top, but not as over the top as he is in Revenge of the Fallen. So,
no, my goodness.
um, but yeah, and so I think Revenge of the Fallen really suffers from the fact that it's just like incessantly obnoxious in terms of the humor and like it is, but it's like got some really good action sequences in it. It's just like
Yeah.
really hard to watch at times because the humor's so bad.
Yeah.
But but yeah, that's kind of where we're at with it. I know this was definitely um, a little different than what we usually do, but I don't know. I was taking a nostalgia trip back through all the movies and decided it'd be fun to talk about it. So that's what we decided to do. But and I know you'd be all about it because I remember we used to
Transformers
watch
as
all
a
these
whole.
together. So
I like Transformers as a whole. Not saying it's as
um,
good as some other franchises, but
it's definitely not as good as some other franchises, but it is enjoyable for what it is. We'll put it that way. And if
fighting
you haven't,
robots and explosions.
yeah, and if you haven't seen the YouTube videos of people doing the Michael Bay edits on other movies, it's called like you can watch Up, directed by Michael Bay, and it's just like they just take scenes from movies and add a bunch of explosions to them. That has to be the funniest crap I've seen. It's very relatable. So, but yeah, I think that's all we got for this one. But I guess we'll just ask if you could support us, give us a like, a subscribe, comment, share these videos so we can get this stuff out to more people. We really enjoy what we do, but we can't do it without your support. So thank y'all for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.